Hello, everyone. Welcome to Suspense Magazine Radio. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn, and I'm here today with New York Times bestselling author Jayne Ann Krentz to talk about her new romantic thriller, Shattering Dawn, which releases on January 7th. Do I have that right, Jane?
January 7th, not much longer now.
It's right around the corner. Shattering Dawn, it's a beautiful cover, by the way, and I really loved the title. It's such a unique title. It's great. It's
I
very action.
cannot take credit for the cover. Every time they ask me for cover ideas, I send in the worst possible ideas. I have no visual sensibility whatsoever. Totally in the hands of the publisher's wonderful artistic department.
Well, that's great. Well, they obviously know. I guess they know what they're doing by now, or they know your flavor, and they can match it up very, very well. So that's great. I think maybe if you don't mind, just to kind of get us started, kick us off, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. Been doing this for a while. If I look back at my entire career, which I won't go into dates because we're talking the last century, um, I have always written romantic suspense. And in my mind, it was always a very clear definition. You and I were discussing this briefly before we started, because you write romantic suspense yourself. And and we know it when we see it. We know the balance. And it's a unique genre. It's one of the few genres that is actually fused to traditional genres into something unique, the romance genre and the mystery genre. And I think the definition for me of the romantic suspense genre is that every twist and every turn in the romance has to affect the plot, the
Yeah.
mystery, and every twist in the mystery has to impact the relationship. Um, so
Yeah.
it's not just a mystery with a romance on the side, and it's not a romance with a little cute little mystery going on the other side. It really is its own thing. I mean, that's my feeling about it.
Yes, yes, I agree. And I think some people have this kind of misconception about romance and that it's easy to write. And I tell you, romantic suspense, it can tying those ends together sometimes can be a real challenge. And with this particular series, your Lost Night Files series, this is the third book. And if I understand what I had read correctly, uh, each book is individual and can be read on its own, but you also have this overarching plot that ties them all together. And I've done that before, and I know how hard it is.
It
And
is, isn't
so
it? Yeah, yeah.
kudos to you.
You have to leave the reader happy with a solved mystery, essentially, and in the background, another step forward in solving the overarching plot. Yeah. I like
Yes.
I like the concept of trilogies at this point because I've got a lot of books to my name right now, and new readers look at the list and they say, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
So, but with a trilogy, of which I've done a few now, it's like a little bite,
Yes.
a bite
Yeah.
out of my reading, out of my books. And if you like that bite, you might go try some of the other bites. And I like the trilogy concept for that purpose. But I also have fun working out the puzzle of it. Uh,
Yes.
the whole overarching how to make it one step forward with each book, and at the same time deliver a satisfying mystery. What's
Mhm.
your secret? I could use some
I have no secrets. I feel like I'm a
advice.
newcomer every time I start a new book. It's just, yes, I have no secrets to help you out there. Not that you need any of my help, for sure.
Same here. I can't. I stumble through it every time, but there's a
But I
great satisfaction in it when it's all done. So
Yes, absolutely. I do like what you're saying as far as having this trilogy to help readers. It's like a doorway into your Jane world, right?
yeah.
So here's a doorway. If you like it, there's a whole lot of other doorways that you can walk through, a whole nother world, whole world in here that you can have fun in. And so I think it's a really smart thing to do, and fun to write, it sounds like for you. So that's great. Well, I guess before we get too far into this, can you tell us a little bit about Shattering Dawn?
Okay. Just happen to have another copy here.
Yes.
So this is book three in what I call the Lost Night Files trilogy. And the Lost Night Files refers to the name of a podcast that my three heroines established after they each lost a night to amnesia when they walked into the wrong hotel and did
Yes,
not wake up
they did
until the next
indeed.
morning. Yeah. So they've been searching for the answer of what happened to them during that missing night because when they woke up the next morning, they all had some psychic sensibilities, some psychic talents that they didn't have
Mhm.
before they went in. So they're looking for who was running experiments on them. And so each book takes one of the three women, and it's their story, their romance, their relationship, and their mystery that they have to solve and find the clues that will eventually come together in this, the third book, Shattering Dawn. I've always loved to work with the psychic vibe. For those who love the paranormal, I want to emphasize I don't do what most people think of as paranormal. I don't do witches. I don't do vampires. I don't do supernatural. I don't do magic. Can read it and love it, but I don't, it doesn't fit my core story. And I think every author has one.
Yes.
We should talk about that.
Yes, we should.
Um, but the psychic vibe suits me well and it suits my story well because it's just one step beyond intuition. And almost everybody thinks nothing of saying, oh, I've got intuition. You know, they can accept
Yes.
intuition. So that one step beyond into a little stronger version of intuition, which borders on where do you how do you define the difference between intuition and the psychic border, is where I work. So yeah, I do like the idea of a core story because I think my one of my maybe my core advice to writers who are starting out is don't be afraid of it.
Mm.
Find it, identify it, and then think of it as your universe. And you're going to explore it for the rest of your career. Um, and you're going to find that it's huge. You know, it's a huge universe. But my core story, I don't know, we should talk about how you define it, but I'll go first. I
Yeah, yeah.
I will say that when I write a book, it back to the beginning of my career, there are two or three things that are always I'm always working with. I'm always working with the issue of trust.
Mhm,
Trust is one of the biggest risks we all take, and we take it every day.
mhm.
Trust, and I'm also working with entrepreneurial characters, people who are self-starters. Most of them are not in a 9 to 5 job, or if they are in a 9 to 5 job, they're looking for something more that suits their passion. Um, but the bottom line is they're always in the process of reinventing themselves. So trust and reinvention, finding a new path forward. That I look back and it's those two things are all in all my books. Those are the
Even in your other genres that you write in, like your
yeah.
historicals, and I'm not sure how you categorize your Jayne Castle. Is that like what was
So, so they're calling it science fiction,
yeah,
fantasy. Maybe it's not exactly romantasy.
yeah,
Romantasy's usually got dragons and magic, and it's more of a coming of age story, which
yeah.
I'm not doing. But it's a futuristic romance,
There you go. Yeah,
suspense,
yeah.
futuristic
That's
romance, suspense,
yeah,
whatever. It
yeah.
just allows me to take the whole psychic thing to the next level. So what do you think of as your core story? Because I think this is a good conversation for people to think about.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that because I struggle with figuring out what mine is, and that was going to be my question for you is, was that something that you were able to figure out yourself, or was that something through conversations with your friends or critiques that you've had, or how did you drill down into your core story?
Because I just killed off a career, one of my many careers, and I had to reinvent myself. I had this back in the day. Don't make the mistakes I make, right? This being trust me, people, being ahead of the curve is just as bad as being behind the curve in genre fiction. So I was way out there years ago with my futuristic romantic suspense. There was no market for it. So by the time the first three books had come out, I had literally killed off my
Mm,
Jayne Ann Krentz career. And I had to reinvent myself. And at that point, I sat back and thought, okay, what am I doing here? Take away the cute little alien animals and the weird environments and the rocket ships and all that good stuff. And what am I really writing here? It is romantic suspense, but what else is going on?
Mhm.
And I realized that the relationships I was doing were essentially a version of a marriage of convenience. Two people who are forced to work together, forced to trust each other in order to survive. If they
Mhm.
don't learn, if they can't do that, they will not survive the danger that threatens them. And that marriage of convenience, quote unquote, or reluctant partnership, whatever you want to label it, I realized, oh my goodness, that fits right into the Regency world.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's when I
Yeah.
invented my Amanda Quick name. That's
Yeah.
when I thought about my core story, is when I was up against the wall.
As many wonderful things so often happen whenever we have to figure it out then, right? Um, well, if I could just take a small moment here to have a little bit of a fangirl on you a bit. Um, you are and have been one of my writing heroes, and you've always been someone that I'm many other writers have looked up to over the years, and so I just you probably have well over 100 books under your belt at this time, right?
And hence the trilogy approach.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm very curious. I- your stories have inspired a generation or two of writers, and I'm really curious about you. If what excites you about writing with this huge catalog behind you, under you, whatever, however you want to put that. What still excites you about writing?
Well, the excitement is essential because I don't think you can survive this business without it. You
Yeah.
have to be excited by your own story, or you're not going to be able to get it down on. Well, we know that. I mean, that makes sense for everybody. If you're bored, the audience will be bored. Um, but I think it's because I did identify those core issues of trust and there are so many problems that you can, or so many plots you can build around that. And I never get tired of exploring the issue because
Okay.
it's kind of fascinating to me. What the heck? Why do we trust? And look at
Mhm.
the risk and look how many times we're wrong.
Yeah,
How the high risk
right.
involved. And that whole reinvention story, because I think we end up reinventing our lives every time we wake up in the morning. It's like
Mm,
that's job one for the day. Um, and it's what keeps you moving forward.
okay. All
So,
right.
so those things apply in such a general way to everybody,
Yeah.
um, that I can always find a story around it. And within that, and because of that, I will say that my characters are not very different from book to book. They've still got the same virtues and the same problems and the same sense of honor, the same sense of what's right and wrong, which is
Mm,
basically my sense of what's right and wrong.
right,
Um,
right.
what their sense of of integrity. Um, if you like my characters in one book, you'll like them in the next book. If you don't like them in one book, you won't like them in the next book. And
Hmm.
let's face it, we all know what we sell is characters, not plot.
Hmm. True. Yeah,
Every
absolutely.
every author I know will tell you that they're selling what do they say? It's not the plot, it's there's a line that everybody uses of selling characters. I mean, because that's what people come back for. They
Yeah.
don't, yeah, the plots, there are no new plots. Trust
Hmm.
me. I could one way or another we can always analyze a plot and see the basic bones of it. And there's like what, five or six versions out there. Um,
Hmm.
so you're looking for a new way to tell old stories.
Hmm.
And the beauty of writing genre fiction is that genre carries the myth. And it's the myth that we want to read. It's the myth that we remember from history. It's it's the myth that unites us as a nation, as people, as individuals. Nobody lives reality. Everybody lives
Yeah.
for the myth.
That's so well said. Yeah, that I could yeah I could never in 100 years put it any better than that. That's brilliant. Is there it are you know is there a story or anything like that that you I guess feel anxious about? You know, you've got this kind of story idea running around in your head, but you still feel a little bit anxious about writing it, or I don't know, unbelievably, that you might not have the chops to tackle it. Like I say, you've got so many books that this is probably not a thing for you. But I'm always curious if that ever goes away, where you feel that anxiety.
Every time I start a book, it's, can I do this again? Will I
Yeah.
get in? And and I think every author feels that way. It's when you sit down at page one, it looks like a very long road ahead.
Hmm.
You're not always sure you're going to be able to pull it off. And that anxiety is part of where you get your energy to write. I guess there's a plus to stress, as they say. Um,
The great motivator.
yeah, yeah. The anxiety never goes away, and when I'm actually in the process of writing, it's always in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
Um, no matter what else is going on in my life, worrying about how I'm going to get through the plot issue I just wrote myself into a corner with. Um, so I think the anxiety, all you can do is look at it and say, this is energy. This is where the energy comes from, and try to channel it. Do you have any tips on that? I'm open to.
No, like I said, I still every time I start a new story, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to pull this off? And especially, once you get into that muddle middle, it's just like, oh gosh.
I had an interesting chat with a someone who teaches screenwriting.
Mm,
Um, and when you stand back and look at it, almost everything that we write is a three-act play. And that's
hmm.
what screenwriting is, that's what plays are, that's what genre fiction is. A three-act play. And it's that middle,
Yeah.
that mushy middle that gets
Yeah.
everybody. And she said the
Yeah.
screenwriters have the same problem. They've got dynamite openings and they got dynamite conclusions, and then it's like, oh, we got an hour in the middle.
Get this big sag.
So we are not alone. It's the nature of storytelling. And but one tip for what it's worth,
Yeah.
when I find myself really stuck in that, I go ahead and write an ending. And it's not necessarily the final ending, but
Hmm.
but when I try to write the ending, it often clarifies what I need to solve in before I get there. It
Yeah.
clarifies what needs to happen, or what I want, or I can see where I've gone off course at some point.
Hmm.
So for what it's worth, I throw that out there. Try writing an ending. I got that actually from a friend, Christina Dodd, who
Oh
said,
yeah. Yeah.
who
Very
said
nice.
that she discovered it the hard way, out of necessity. And I have since found that tip very useful. So
I got a tip from another one of your good friends. We were talking about Susan Elizabeth Phillips off air. We used to belong to the same RWA chapter many years ago, and she did a little workshop for our chapter. And she talked about when she would get stuck, she would pull out these, big yellow legal pads and then just start writing just thoughts, ideas, just try to kind of break whatever was stopping her from kind of moving on. I'm paraphrasing all this very badly, but I did that. I did that and I do that with every book. So, that little tip really helped me. There's something about writing on a screen that just mucks me up sometimes, and I have to go and I have to get a pad of paper, or I started using a Remarkable. I don't know if you've come across that or not, but it's just like writing on paper, and it's nice because if I write something, then I can what's they call that? Uh, it's like handwriting to text, so you can push a couple of buttons and it will change your handwriting to, yeah, and so I don't have
I,
to retype
I, I think
it.
I've got that gadget on one of my machines. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to go take a look. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, the yellow pad thing. I don't know an author who doesn't have a stack of them.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
think they always say, remember the big brouhaha that came up when everybody said, "Oh, we're not teaching cursive writing in the schools anymore," and
Yeah.
all that.
Yes.
And I don't know
Yeah.
where that stands now. But in the process of explaining all that, um, the people who study that kind of thing said printing makes the brain work in one way,
Mm,
cursive makes the brain work in another way, and typing is a third way. So
okay.
and it follows that each of those methods of getting ideas down, it's going to turn the brain a little differently. And so I can see where it would
Yeah.
up
Makes sense.
new
Yeah.
thoughts to do it in another way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, now that we solved everybody's writing problems.
I know. We can move on to even more fun stuff here. I was just kind of curious as we're kind of drawing to a close here with the interview, but have you read anything recently that you want to rave about? Any recent books that you've read that you just love?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the Gothics,
Yes.
and there's a Gothic writer named Jess Armstrong who is doing
Ah.
a this one is called The Secret of the Three Fates, and it just came out. And the first one was a year ago. Let's see if I can find it there. Naturally. Oh, The Curse of Penrith Hall was the first one.
Oh,
So these
okay.
are, and I just love the Gothic thing, and she does a great job with it. And she picks an interesting time because it's post World War One,
Mm,
and that's just a time of seances and just a horrible time for the recovery from the god awful war. And so there's a lot to work with in terms of the setting and the mysteries, and it's just far enough back in time that people were serious about seances. They
okay. All right.
not that
Well,
they aren't
thank you.
today, but
That's great.
so
Add
that
it
was
to my growing pile. That's
well,
wonderful.
if you like the Gothic, and I do
Yeah.
think it's a fundamental story of romantic suspense, and
Very,
with the psychic element or with
yes.
usually with
Yeah.
a paranormal element. So
Yeah. Very nice. Okay. Well, how about just kind of close us out here a little bit? Can you tell us about what might be coming up for you next? Do you have any projects you can talk about or anything fun to share?
well, as you know, I write under a couple different names, and one of them is Jayne Castle, and that's when I do my futuristic romantic suspense. So in June, my next Harmony book, and Harmony's a long-running series, Another Planet, cute
Mm.
animals. Like
Yes.
everything I tried to do all those years ago, the
Right.
market finally opened up again. Um, and so the one that's coming up in June is It Takes a Psychic,
Okay.
under my Jayne Castle name. So
All
yeah,
right. So June. All right. Great. And then where's the best place for readers to connect with you online?
well, I've got a wonderful website, which nobody seems to go to websites anymore,
Yeah,
but I do have one.
I
And
do.
it's useful if you're looking for the trilogies and a breakdown of the books and how to by series and all that good stuff, which is just www.janeannkrentz.com. Jane with
Okay.
a Y, Jane with a Y.
All right.
Um, I'm also pretty active on Facebook, just Jayne Ann Krentz on Facebook.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jane. I really appreciate you coming. I know you're a very busy lady, I'm sure. So I appreciate you coming in to chat with me about Shattering Dawn. Folks, be sure to pre-order your copy. There you go. So you can enjoy it after the new year. In the meantime, you can grab the first two books in the series, which is Sleep No More and The Night Island. Correct?
Right?
Yes. All right.
I didn't
Well,
remember the names myself, so thank you.
you're welcome. That's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining us on Suspense Magazine Radio. Thanks again, Jane, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.